Every video and episode of the It's Cavalier podcast is made possible by my supporters over on Patreon. If you enjoy the show here today, consider signing up. You'll get early access, exclusive videos, podcasts, member shoutouts, and more. And as always, thank you for watching. Welcome to another edition of the It's Cavalier podcast. It's your boy Mac, and you know what? Preseason, Cavaliers preseason kicks off on Tuesday night. The Cavaliers have a matchup with none other than the Chicago Bulls, who our old pal Okoro will likely be making his debut with. I'm at this point right now where I am just so damn giddy to find out what we are going to see. Like all of these different things that the Cavaliers have presumably been working on during training camp. We keep hearing this and that out of training camp, things alluding to the pace of play, to players that are standing out. And I think we all have these certain types of players, or at least specific players that we're all anxious to see, whether that's a player making their debut and win a goal like a Thomas Bryant or Alonzo Ball, or whether that's to see the continued development of a player who has already been here. That players like Evan Mobley or Nae'Qwan Tomlin or Jalen Tyson in the preseason is a perfect place to be able to see some of those developments play out. I know it's not a pressurized environment at all, and that is fine because it's Cavaliers basketball at the end of the day, but it's all the same to me, right? Long off season, terrible way to end the playoffs for this Cavaliers team last year. I know that left a nasty taste in my mouth. I'm sure it left a nasty taste in yours as well. And so what better way to wash that out than to watch some Cavaliers preseason basketball and to see what this team could potentially look like heading into the 2025-26 regular season. Now, right off the bat, we already know, right? No Darius Garland, no Max Strus. Those two we can automatically rule out. And maybe we'll see another name or two added just for pure cautionary purposes prior to Tuesday night's tip-off. But, man, I'll tell you what, right up at the top for me, one of the biggest names that I want to see make their unofficial debut, because it's preseason, I hate the regular season, Lonzo Ball, a player that many people, including myself, are really, really high on from a hypothetical standpoint. And based upon some of the reports that have come out of Cleveland Cavaliers training camp, I'm even more excited. The last one that we saw was that Lonzo Ball is apparently turning heads at training camp. And one of the quotes that you guys probably saw it too. I guess I'll read it, But he's showing glimpses of why, number one, he's better, more impactful than Okoro, and number two, why he can help with a lot of those subtle changes that the Cavaliers are looking to implement at both ends of the floor, including more switching on defense and then offense, obviously playing with more pace and getting the ball up the floor even faster than what they did last year. And so if you take that, right, if you take it at face value, I think what is important to understand is this. Everybody continues to talk about Okoro and like making sure that the Cavaliers win this trade, when honestly, that's not what it's really truly going to be about for Cleveland. We already know that Lonzo Ball on paper is going to be a better player, at least from an impactfulness standpoint, an impact standpoint on that court than Okoro if he remains healthy. That's never been the question. The question is, how much more can he elevate the Cavaliers than Ty Jerome did last year? The reality is this. Lonzo Ball is not going to replace the pure dynamism that Ty Jerome brought to the table. He's not going to bring the same type of presence out there from a pure scoring standpoint. But what you are going to see from Lonzo Ball is him upping the ceiling from a defensive standpoint, and you're going to see that playmaking be elevated out there. It's no disrespect to Ty Jerome. Hopefully he has a great season with the Memphis Grizzlies, but Lonzo Ball is unquestionably a much better playmaker. Something else you're going to see, an area in which that's going to play out heavily, is likely to be in transition, i.e. the pace, right? That is why we keep hearing about that, because Lonzo, he's not really a drive and kick type of guy. It is in his game. He can do it, but he is not a player that has ever truly been high in terms of total drives per season. That has never been something that has been his forte. What you will see from him is him break starting. He is an incredible break starter, somebody who can go out there and push the tempo, somebody who can go out there and bring a elevated level of play and being able to get the ball down the court, whether that be some, Wes Unseld, Kevin Love type outlet passes, or simply just getting the ball out quicker in transition. And I think when you hear that pace wording, right? Because the Cavs were 10th in pace last year. I think they bumped up to 6th among the field of participants in the playoffs last year. But they can play even quicker than that. And perhaps even better than that, they can play even more efficient. And they were damn efficient last year. But I think the one thing that we're going to be looking to see with Lonzo is how he makes plays for others. How does he raise that ceiling in terms of a playmaking standpoint? Does he get guys in their specific spots? Is he able to hit a Evan Mobley, a Jarrett Allen, a Thomas Bryant, a Larry Nance Jr. in transition? Is he able to hit them with that perfectly placed lob? Is Kenny Atkinson going to utilize him more in the drive and kick game? Something, like I said, has never truly been his forte, but is he going to get out of his comfort zone in being able to do that on ball, right? Even when he is not on the ball in terms of a playmaking aspect, this is a player who will swing the basketball around, right? Side to side, perimeter actions and whatnot. He will make that extra pass, a la the hockey assist. He will do many of these different things that equate to high level playmaking off the ball. For me, like watching Darius Garland and Lonzo Ball move the basketball are kind of two different things. Darius Garland was, I believe, 6th in the entire NBA last season in drives, total drives. He is a player that loves and thrives in getting the bigs the basketball, especially a Jarrett Allen out there. The chemistry between the bigs and Darius is huge. So I'll be very interested in seeing some of that play out, hopefully in this first preseason game against Chicago, right? And another thing is, right, how much is Lonzo going to play? I think that being able to stay upright is at the top of the order for Lonzo. That is why we've heard time and time again that he's not probably going to be involved in back-to-backs, or if he is, right, they're going to probably manage his minutes in such a way that it feels like Lonzo's just not playing, right? I think the cautious approach is probably the best thing. But these are all things that I'm looking to see from Lonzo Ball in particular, starting in this first preseason game. Another area that I want to see from Lonzo is the off-ball shooting. Lonzo is not really a pull-up guy. It is not. We have seen him do it, but it's been inefficient. So what I want to see from Lonzo is, can he be impactful without the ball in his hands as a perimeter shot? Can he hit the corner triple off a drive and kick from a Donovan, from a Sam Merrill, who may get more on-ball duties, from an Evan Mobley, who they're going to put the ball in his hands, hopefully force feed him even more this year with Darius and Max out? Can Lonzo be impactful as an off-ball shot maker? Because again, right, these last 2 seasons, really the last 3 years have been not really, you can't really count anything, right? He missed 2 full seasons of basketball from the 2022-23 season through the 2023-24 season. When he did come back for Chicago last year, playing in only 35 games or so, his shooting splits were woeful, but all was forgiven in that aspect, right? I cannot take those 35 games and hold them against him and just say this is who Lonzo is, because prior to the surgeries, prior to all the rehab, Lonzo had been trending upward in a major way in terms of three-point shooting, right? Started in his first season in New Orleans, where he shot 37.5% on a very good 6.3 attempts per game. Next season for New Orleans, he shot 37.8%, even better on higher volume at 8.3 per contest. And then that final season before he got injured in Chicago, which is the 2021-22 season, in those 35 games, Lonzo was hitting, man. That dude, like from the field overall, it wasn't spectacular, just 42.3%. But from three-point distance, this dude was shooting over 42.3%. He was splashing on 7.4 attempts per game. And the majority of that, as you could imagine, was catch and shoot. It was off ball. And so if Lonzo, even if he doesn't get back to shooting over 40% from three-point distance, if you can get him to around 37, 38% on higher volume, let's say like 5 to 6 attempts per game, because let's not mince words here. He's not going to play as many minutes as he was in Chicago or where he was in New Orleans, where he was playing over 30 minutes per game. And even in his first season in Chicago, he was playing 34 plus. That is not the version of Lonzo the Cavaliers are getting. But I think they can afford to manage him in ways that Chicago and New Orleans and LA just did not have the ability to do. And so if you can get him in limited minutes, maybe 18 to 22 per night during the regular season, if you can get him shooting, I don't know, 5 to 6 threes a game up in around 37 to 38%, I think you're cooking, because along with that, you're getting the playmaking from him. You're getting the perimeter defense, a player that is still, even in some sapped athleticism, Lonzo Ball is still one hell of a perimeter defender. He's somebody that has size out there in that backcourt. And I think that was a major thing that the Cavaliers were wanting to address this offseason. And Ty Jerome's not a small point guard, or a small guard rather, at 6'5" or so, but he is not a defender by any means. He's not a defender by any means. Somebody who could get by playing the passing lanes is sort of a pickpocket out there as well. But Lonzo, he gives you all of these different things. He's opportunistic in terms of picking your pocket. He will play the passing lanes and do so very, very well. And in perimeter isolation, he will hold up better than just about anybody else on this roster, outside of maybe Dean Wade on the perimeter, right? And you can throw Sam Merrill into the equation. A lot of people aren't high enough on him in terms of the perimeter isolation defense. But with no more Isaac Okoro, you need somebody to be able to pick up the toughest perimeter matchups, because Dean Wade's not going to play every single minute of every single game. And so along with the three-point shooting that I want to see, you're getting that playmaking, you're getting that perimeter defense. So you're getting like this very it's not an odd archetype, but it's not an archetype that you see very often, right? It's kind of like a playmaking 3-and-D wing. That is what I consider Lonzo Ball. If you play 2K at all, you have all these different like labels and whatnot. Lonzo, to me, and I know it's not worded exactly that way over on 2K, but to me, he's a playmaking 3-and-D wing. Somebody who can impact the game on both ends of the court. And I hope to see that starting in game 1 against these Chicago Bulls, right? Outside of Lonzo, because Lonzo, I could talk all day about him. The other players that I'm really, really pumped to see, as you can no doubt guess, is Thomas Bryant. That's probably the number one player outside of Lonzo Ball that I really want to see make his debut in wine and gold, because I just think that he adds something to this team that just hasn't been there for a number of years. And that is a true 5 who can actually space the floor. Like the percentages, they won't wow you, but in the playoffs, and that is where we need to see this impact be felt the most. He was money, especially from the corners. He led all reserve centers in corner triples. He's somebody that can be trusted in a playoff series in a pinch. If you're experiencing foul trouble with an Evan Mobley or Jarrett Allen, or Larry Nance Jr. is just not cutting it from a physicality standpoint or from a pure matchup standpoint, just outsized, right? This is for your New Yorks of the world who feature guys like Mitchell Robinson. This is for your Atlanta Hawks out there with some of the beefier and bigger guys that they have out there. This is for your Wendell Carter Juniors over in Atlanta, right? There's a number of teams that I think that he could be very, very useful against. So very, very hype to see what Thomas Bryant can bring to the table. And I think one of the things is like, where do his minutes come from? In the preseason, it is what it is. In the regular season, that's going to be a balancing act for probably the entirety of the regular season. Because to me, and I know a lot of people just disagree when I say this, but I still do believe that the Cavaliers will probably opt to give Evan Mobley a good share of backup 5 minutes when Jarrett Allen's not in the game to make use. Because among the three, among Evan Mobley, Larry Nance Jr., and Thomas Bryant, Evan Mobley to me is still the best floor spacer of the bunch. I think you've seen him improve routinely year after year as a perimeter shooter, and I think that is going to only continue even if the percentages go down a bit. I think if the volume escalates and he's able to become a true threat from beyond the arc, I think Evan's going to continue to get minutes at backup 5. And I know that when you add a Thomas Bryant, when you add a Larry Nance Jr., people are going to automatically assume that Evan is not going to get those minutes there anymore. But I just don't think that's going to be the case, especially in a playoff series. I trust Evan Mobley at the 5 rather than I do, Thomas Bryant or Larry Nance Jr. getting the bulk of those minutes. That's not to say they can't do it, but if I need somebody that I trust out there, I'm going to put Evan Mobley at the 5 in the playoffs in those backup 5 minutes primarily, right? When they actually want him in the game in those times. So for me, it's going to be a balancing act because I do think that he's going to play a good amount, probably around 15 to 18 minutes or so per game in the regular season. But I think that could drop down to 12 to 10 to maybe 12 come the playoffs, depending upon the matchup and how the bigs are faring as a whole. Is Evan Mobley struggling? Is Jarrett Allen struggling? Is Larry Nance Jr. hurt or struggling, right? I think it becomes entirely matchup dependent come the playoffs for Thomas Bryant in terms of those minutes per game. But in the preseason, as we're getting ready to see here on Tuesday, I hope they give him a ton of run, right? Don't throw Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley out there for an entire minutes worth, an entire game's worth of minutes out there, right? Don't play them 30 plus. Give Thomas Bryant 18 to 22. Give Thomas Bryant something along those lines just to see what he looks like in some of these lineups, because I think that's what we're probably going to end up seeing is a lot of experimentation in the early portion of the season. And that's another reason why I think Thomas will play a good deal during the regular season, but things get kind of hazy come the playoffs. But I think that all starts and being able to experiment in what he actually brings to the table and not just the physicality aspect, because yes, that is a huge thing. But I think that outside of that, the floor spacing and the rebounding that he brings out there and the post defense that he can contribute at the 5, these are still valuable things. And if Kenny Atkinson can find a way to work them in, even in a pretty stacked front court now, and that sounds fucking crazy, right? Because prior to this season, you did not hear anybody utter those words. Depth in the front court is at an all-time high right now, right? Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen are 2 all-star caliber front court running mates out there. Evan Mobley is going to likely be a top 10 player, hell, maybe even top 5 this season. He's already won a defensive player of the year. He's already been named to an all NBA team, an all defensive team. These are all things that are going to be hopefully consistent for him moving forward. But Jarrett Allen, we can't sleep on him. I know that the last 2 games of the season in the series against Indiana left a sour taste in many people's mouths, including mine. But Jarrett still played 82 last year, still looked like a fringe all-star out there. And if he brings his A game for a consistent postseason run, you still got a hell of a starting duo out there for Cleveland. Then beyond them, obviously, you have Larry Nance Jr. and Thomas Bryant, and throw Dean Wade in there, who could theoretically get some minutes at backup 4, backup 5, if you need him to in a pinch. DeAndre Hunter could potentially see minutes at backup 4. Who knows what Kenny's plan is for him moving forward, though. A lot of people want him to start. I do, but I also see the potential impact that he brings to the table coming off the bench, because you don't have that Ty Jerome out there that is a bucket getter, somebody that can provide offense in a pinch when you need it. And I mean, as much as people hate the idea of him coming off the bench still, at least to begin the season, you can't lie. Ty Jerome saved the Cavaliers' asses in a lot of matchups last year due to his ability to catch fire at the drop of the hat or get a timely basket. These are the things that the Cavaliers heading into the season don't really have a solidified answer in. Like, we hope that Jalen Tyson is able to take a step forward. We hope that Craig Porter Jr. is able to finally show that he belongs as an everyday rotation member. We hope that Lonzo Ball can bring somewhat of a reliable scoring punch to that bench. But the reality is this, like, it's going to be a committee approach in terms of replacing Ty Jerome and for the scoring. So DeAndre Hunter, him potentially coming off the bench, still makes a lot of sense in theory. But still, though, I want to see him start. And I'll be very interested in seeing who the starting five is in this first preseason matchup. And you got to take it with a grain of salt because G Leaguers and guys who would never get the time of day for other teams often get these starting nods just because players or teams rather don't want to play their best players. But at the end of the day, I think we can still derive a lot from Kenny Atkinson's game plan with this initial starting lineup. We can pencil in Donovan Mitchell. We can pencil in Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen, I would presume. But the questions are at the 2, because I think Don's going to slide over to the 1. The questions are at the 2 and the 3. Does Sam Merrill start alongside Donovan Mitchell at the 2 to open preseason? I think so. I think that's the direction we're headed in. Is Dean Wade or DeAndre Hunter starting at the 3 in this first preseason matchup? These are the things that I hope to see play out. These are some of the questions that I want to see answered. In the lineup, the versatility from the lineups that you are going to get from the drop, because I don't think Kenny's going to tip his hat or tip his cap rather, and tip his hand. I'm struggling to find out the right sequence of words there in the saying, but you guys know what I'm trying to say. I don't think Kenny is going to show us everything. He's probably going to keep it pretty vanilla in terms of the lineups. You're going to save some of your better lineups for the season in some of these bigger matchups. But the fun part about all of this is that Kenny now has so many different ingredients to work with. Yeah, in theory, he had that last year, but you have so much more positional versatility and lineup versatility out there than you had in really any season in this current iteration of the Cavaliers, right? Because Lonzo, he's a guy that can play the 1, he can play the 2, he can give you some spot minutes at the 3. Thomas Bryant gives you that floor spacing at the 5. Larry Nance Jr. on paper can still play the 4. He's played the 5 primarily for these last 3 seasons, and he's been pretty damn good at it. And he adds that floor spacing element with the rebounding twist to it. He is still a solid defender out there. You have the ability to trot DeAndre Hunter in 2 different positions. The same can be said for Sam Merrill or Max Strus. You just have a lot more versatility out there. Jalen Tyson, right? This is a player who we have seen play minutes at the 2, the 3, and some 4. Somebody who's a very good offensive rebounder out there. So to me, like, you hope to see some of this experimentation pay off come the playoffs. But I just think that from the jump, you have to sort of set a certain precedent, right? You have to go out there and set the tone for what you're going to see throughout the regular season. And I think that starts on Tuesday against Chicago. So I cannot wait to see what lineups are thrown out there and who actually suits up alongside who. And I know you guys are too, right? And some of the development. I think that one of these guys that I'm really, really curious about is Tyrese Proctor, right? For everything that we've heard being said about Jalen Tyson and his development and how much he could potentially be a boom or bust pick for one of those, impactful pieces this year. I think I'm very interested to see how much Tyrese Proctor plays this upcoming season. I don't think it's a lot. I think he plays less than 10 minutes per game. Probably doesn't see the court outside of blowouts or back-to-backs. But I'm gonna leave the door open because you've heard a lot of people rave about what he potentially brings to the table as an off-ball shooter. You've heard that he does have a playmaking aspect to his game and that he does have some size to him at around 6'4", 6'5" or so. But for me, like I just don't think that he's going to play that much come the regular season, and I think he'll be non-existent come the playoffs in terms of actual minutes per game. But this is why like preseason action is so important, because these guys in theory will actually get to see the floor much more than they did or will in the regular season. And Tyrese Proctor coming in as a rookie, a rookie that the Cavaliers were really, really high on, apparently, right? Giving him that multi-year contract, not signing him to a two-way or anything like that. And again, there's a monetary component to this too that makes sense. But I think that they were high enough on him to consider this kind of a wild card, kind of a throw up type of thing, throw the dart and see where it lands type of deal with Tyrese Proctor. So I'm very curious to see what he looks like alongside actual NBA talent. The summer league environment is one thing, and we saw him shoot a ton of shots. He shot below 30% from 3-point distance. He did look rather uncomfortable at times when asked to have on-ball reps, but he started to settle into that a little bit more as time went on. But I think he profiles much more as an off-ball guy to begin his NBA career, and I'm perfectly fine with that. He shot over 40% from deep in his final season at Duke. He led them in triples, right? I think his 89 triples were third in the ACC conference this past season for Duke. So there's a lot that he brings to the table. The question is, how much is he actually going to play in year one? I think we might get a good, clean look at him in this game against Chicago in the rest of this preseason slate. But that's another guy that I'm really, really excited to see what he brings to the table alongside some of these other players, right? Because you can make better use of the shooting that he brings if he is off ball. If you get Alonzo Ball beside him, if you get a Donovan Mitchell beside him, right? Darius Garland. If you play him in these lineups that emphasize floor spacing, you put him in the corners or above the break, I think that he could definitely make this team better simply by his gravity that he could potentially bring to the table. So although he may not play a lot, I think that there are a lot of different aspects to his game that could be very vital for the Cavaliers given time, right? I don't know. These are the types of players that I think we should all be very, very hyped up about in terms of viewability, watchability in the preseason as far as preseason games go. But that's kind of where I'm at right now. Everybody else, it is what it is. I don't think you're going to really get much else out of Jarrett Allen and DeAndre Hunter and Dean Wade, Donovan Mitchell that you don't already know, because these are the types of players that you need to see them do it in the in the postseason rather than the preseason or regular season. These are the types of players that I think that you want to have those questions answered come the playoffs. There's nothing, absolutely nothing that they can show you during the preseason or regular season that is going to matter to you in terms of changing your mind one way or another. So this type of time is reserved for the Lonzos, for the Tysons, for the Proctors and the Bryants of the world, because they're new to the team, and two, there's still enough of a developmental curve with some of these guys that, the preseason does hold a certain level of intrigue in terms of what we could potentially see. So that really, really excites me, and probably more than it has in a number of years. This is probably the most locked in, the most tuned in that I personally will be to a Cavaliers preseason. And don't get me wrong, I watch every single game. But in terms of like investment, in times of putting the time into evaluating the individual things from possession to possession in a preseason, this is probably one of those things, one of these years where it's like, okay, I got to lock the fuck in. I got to see what these guys look like, right? Some of this young talent. Nae'Qwan Tomlin, probably another guy that I expect a lot out of in terms of the minutes that he sees in the preseason. The Cavaliers love Nae'Qwan Tomlin. Some of the veterans on the team love Nae'Qwan Tomlin. Donovan Mitchell, right? He's a guy who's taken Nae'Qwan under his wing, and I think that can only be a benefit to Nae'Qwan's future. So this is another player that I really hope gets a lot of minutes in the preseason and gets to play alongside a lot of this other NBA caliber talent rather than simply a summer league environment or a G League environment. Don't get me wrong. He's on that two-way, and I know that the reality is that the Cavaliers, in the certain situation that they're in with the CBA and being in a second apron, you're going to make use of his eligibility. You get the 50 games, and then you make a decision. Same can be said for Luke Travers, who I'm excited to see. Hopefully, I think the three-point shot is really the only thing holding Travers' game back. If Travers could shoot at least 37% from three-point range, I think he'd already be in the rotation. That might be sacrilege to some of you out there, but I do believe that he has NBA glue guy written all over him. And when I look at Luke Travers, one player that I've kind of always thought about him potentially modeling his game after is Kyle Anderson. Like, I don't know how many of you guys remember Kyle Anderson with like Minnesota and Golden State. He's a player that I believe could potentially be a good player comp for Luke Travers if he is able to develop somewhat of a three-point shot. And don't get it twisted. You know, he is not necessarily a great shooter himself, and Kyle Anderson, but I definitely think that he could model his game after Kyle Anderson and carve out a role in the back end of a rotation in time if he could shoot. Just got to be able to get that down, because to me, like as Lawrence Goggins down here says, yes, Travers can ball, jack of all trades. That to me, like that is where his game is. He's a very versatile guy. Jack of all trades, master of none type of player out there. But the real limiting factor for him, the swing skill, at least at the NBA level, if you watch him at all, it's pretty clear. Like if you can shoot, you have a role in this rotation in time, right? Max Strus contract is going to run up eventually. Sam Merrill just signed a new contract, right? He'll probably be in town for at least another year or two. Dean Wade, they have decisions to make on him. But the thing to me is that those guys, what they're on at the very least able to do, you can count on them to some degree. Maybe not necessarily Dean Wade as much, but they can shoot. Dean Wade is a career 36.8% shooter from three-point distance. If you can get to like the 36-37% range from a Luke Travers, he is easily an NBA caliber player to me at the back end of your rotation. And so having him on the 2A, utilizing the eligibility that he could potentially, or that he has rather, with the 50 games, that's another decision they're going to have to make. And let's not forget, they still have an open 2A spot. So guys like Norchad Omir, you guys know I'm very, very high on him. Guys like Tristan Inaruna, this is the prime time for them to potentially get the opportunity to showcase what they bring. You know, Killian Hayes, who they signed to a training camp deal, basically, his eligibility ran out. So you're probably just going to see him with the charge unless there's an untimely injury and the Cavaliers want to sign somebody at guard. But this environment, the preseason environment, is what this is all about. Evaluation, getting to see what development guys have made and seeing what some of these lineups look like, and getting certain players playing alongside one another. And so I'm very, very excited. I also have to take this moment to acknowledge the fact that we're going to see Isaac Okoro on the other sideline. And I know a lot of people in this fan base were not necessarily huge fans of Isaac, thought he was a draft bust, drafted too high, whatever, what have you. What I can say about Isaac Okoro is that he's still relatively young. I do believe that he is in an environment right now to potentially get more run, to expand upon his game. At least that's probably the hope for Chicago. And if Isaac is able to make some sort of development over there, I'll be really, really happy and excited for him. But I gotta say, like, just from a pure emotional standpoint, just a pure fan perspective, sucks to see him donning the colors over there in Chicago. But it was for the best. That move was a move that they absolutely had to make. They shaved $1 million They got a little bit more flexibility because Lonzo's contract, if the Cavaliers don't like what they see this season, they can easily pivot. He has a team option for the 2026-27 season. Isaac Okoro's contract was never going to allow that. So I think that you gave yourself that flexibility, and it was a trade that you do 10 times over. It's definitely one that I threw out there a lot. You guys already know that. But it does suck to see him suiting up on the other sideline. And the gambles that the Cavaliers took, right? He is going to forever be linked to that. If this shit does not work this year with Lonzo, if this shit does not work with Ty Jerome being, leaving town in favor of re-signing Sam Merrill, this is always going to be something that people talk about, right? If you look at some of these the timelines here, right? If you look at the timeline here, this is the real season in which the Cavaliers can make that title push. A lot of different things are working in their favor, right? Doesn't always align like that. Boston, they're experiencing somewhat of a gap year with Jason Tatum not going to play this year. A lot of players and pieces that were moved out in favor of shedding some salary. So I don't think anybody really considers them to be a contender this year. Indiana, they lost the head of the snake for the season in Tyrese Halliburton. They moved on from Miles Turner. They are not likely to be the same type of team that they were this past playoffs. It's just not going to happen. Miami, Milwaukee, right? Atlanta, New York, all of them are going to have to incorporate either new pieces into their rotation or new coaches, like Mike Brown over in New York, former Cleveland Cavalier head coach 2 times over. These are all things that the opponent is going to have to deal with. The Cavaliers, on the other hand, while they are working pieces into the back end of their rotation, while they are dealing with injuries, at least for the early portion of the season, one of the biggest things working for them is continuity. Continuity is everything. And I think as long as this team can stay healthy, as long as they can field a competent rotation that is able to align itself and complement one another out there, I think the sky's the limit. I think they're really going to be driving Evan Mobley's development this year. They're going to probably force feed him the ball, and I love that idea. I think they're going to try and manage Lonzo Ball and Darius Jr. as much as they can. I think they're going to lean into developing the young talent on the roster, and I think that can only be a great thing because obviously the CBA is doing its job to a degree and limiting what contenders can do to retain some of the top level talent that they have. So there's going to be some really, really hard conversations that this team is going to have to look at the mirror and ask themselves. If Dean Wade, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, but if Dean Wade all of a sudden has like a career year, and what the fuck does that even look like for Dean? If he goes out there and balls out in his role, if he is a star in his role, if he finally plays confidently in the playoffs, if he gives us a good amount of 3-point shots per game, while continuing to provide that defense and while staying healthy, do the Cavaliers entertain re-signing him? Does the team, if they flame out, do they move on from a member of the core 4? There is just a lot of. Do they move on from Lonzo? If this whole thing with Lonzo doesn't play out the way that they want it to, this is a make or break year in many, many ways. And in some ways, it begins on Tuesday in this preseason matchup with Chicago. And man, I just cannot wait to see how this all plays out. I'm very, very excited. I'll be going live much as I always do during these times, and I cannot wait to write down some of my observations. But I don't know. You guys, let me know what you think about this matchup with Chicago in the comments below. If you like to reach out to me, you know how you can. It's Cavalier_pod on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and more. If you want to be added to this Cavalier Discord chat, you know what to do. Leave a rating, leave a review, send a screenshot, etc. Review to it's Cavalier53@gmail.com, and I will send you said invite. If you want to support the pod in a small but helpful way, consider becoming a member over on Patreon. You can do so at YouTube as well for as little as $1 a month, right? That's so damn cheap. But even if you don't do that, I'll still be here making the content just because I love this team and I know you do too. Go Cavs.